Thank you for joining me in this Widow's Grief Share. My hope and prayer is that this will not only be a means for us to share our grief, but will also be an instrument of support and healing to all of us as we share our grief with one another. This first talk is about how we need each other. What qualifies me to take on a widow's grief share? Nothing. I'm not qualified. I'm not a professional counselor. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a public speaker. I don't produce videos. I'm just a widow. A widow who has been working through her own grief for almost 2 years now. Does that qualify me to help you? No, not at all. If I've learned anything in the past 2 years, it's that I myself need help. I could not work through my grief by myself. I still cannot deal with my sadness and my trials alone. I have needed so much help, and I continue to need support, comfort, and advice. I'm simply hoping that by sharing my journey with you and you sharing your insights with us, that we might be able to help each other. And maybe we will be able to bring some healing to ourselves and to others in the process. Immediately following my husband's death, I found that I was no longer able to cope with my everyday life. In fact, I really did not want to go on living. Life was simply too hard to deal with. I did not feel capable of facing all the challenges and problems alone. However, I had no other choice but to go on. As long as my heart kept beating and I kept breathing, I would have to go on living. The only decision I had was not whether or not I would go on, but deciding how I would go on. Though I had always tried to live my life unselfishly in service to others, at that time in my life, I did not feel like I had anything to offer, nor did I have it in me to give. I was empty, broken, and emotionally destitute. Therefore, in order for me to cope with my daily life and to reach a point where I would again be able to give to others, I knew I would have to get well myself first. And so I began my journey of restoration. I intentionally focused on first trying to heal myself. I knew that I would never be able to help others unless I first helped myself. I first needed to be whole again. There are so many people who are grieving. We're not alone in our sorrow. In fact, I'm sure everyone has encountered heartache at some point in their life. I discovered how many others were also grieving when I shared my own pain. Sharing our grief with others brings comfort. Those who have gone through grief themselves can sympathize and empathize with one another, for we share the same experiences that come with the loss of a loved one. Till you have gone through the loss of a spouse yourself, you really have no idea what it feels like, how devastating it is. I wanted to connect with others who had also suffered the loss of a loved one, for they would best understand where I was coming from. Therefore, I joined a grief share group. Because I felt an urgency to heal, I joined a group only 2 months after my husband's death. Most people need longer than that before they are able to deal with their grief. Some may not feel the need to delve more deeply into their loss till years later. Some try to repress their sorrow and to continue on with their daily lives as normal. Others have no choice but to go back to work after a very short period of bereavement leave. I don't know how anyone can be ready to go back to work a week after their loved one has passed away. I was very blessed to be in a position where I could take the time to heal and get well. Trying to ignore your grief will not make it go away. It cannot be ignored forever, for your grief remains buried within you until it is dealt with. After my first grief share group was done, I still felt a need for more help. So I then joined a widow's grief support group. For both groups, I was very motivated to get well. I attended every meeting, shared all my grief, did all the homework. Working through this process helped me greatly in moving forward. I found that sharing our pain with one another and giving each other support brought healing. Your friends and family can sympathize with you because they care for you. They feel bad for you because they know you are suffering. But widows have a special bonding with one another through widowhood. It is one thing to hear about someone losing their husband and sympathizing with them, but you really have no idea what they are going through till you lose your own husband. Only when you've experienced it yourself can you truly comprehend all that is involved. What a broken heart feels like, to know loneliness at such a deep level, to struggle through overwhelming anxiety and fear. Widows do more than sympathize with you, they empathize with you, for they have all experienced similar feelings and faced many of the same heartbreaks and challenges. You will never be totally healed from your grief. You will never reach a point where you get over the loss of your husband. Even though there is no magic cure, there is still much you can do to work towards healing. One of the things that helps is sharing your grief with others who are also grieving. It helps to realize that others have also experienced the emotional roller coaster you are going through, and that your seemingly irrational behaviors are actually normal. You discover there are other women who are experiencing the same hardships, the same emotions, and the same behaviors as you are. You can relate to each other, you can support each other, and you can help each other. The reason I felt the need to do this online is because I know there are many women who are not able to attend support groups for one reason or another. Also, there are many widows who do not want to socialize after the loss of their husband. Many who would rather isolate themselves at home because it's just too hard to make the extra effort to get out and to connect. Even though that may be the case, we still do need each other. Don't think that you don't need help, or that you shouldn't need help, or that you can do it alone. That's a lie. In this season of your life, you do need others. You cannot carry the weight of your grief alone. You don't want to carry it alone. It's too heavy. Others can help you carry your load and lighten your burden. That's what we're here for, to help one another. We all have a need for connection and relationship, especially at this point in your life when you feel so alone. We all need to know we are not alone. We all need to know someone cares. We all need to know we are wanted. We need to know we are loved, and we need to know we are valued. We were never meant to go through life alone. Every person's grief process is unique. Everyone's story is different. We have no right to judge or criticize the grief journey of another person. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. It takes courage to share. I don't want anyone to feel judged in this grief share. In fact, when we are reaching out and making an emotional connection, we need to feel accepted and loved by those we have reached out to. We need to be encouraged by one another. Any type of rejection is hard to handle when we are so vulnerable, and a widow is especially vulnerable. The one person who is always there to encourage us, to protect us, and to comfort us is no longer there. So when we are judged, criticized, or put down, we take it very personally. It's hard to take because we bear the burden of the disapproval alone on our own shoulders. Everyone takes feedback personally, but especially when you feel all alone. Therefore, let all your comments to one another be kind, encouraging, and helpful. Let's try to uplift one another. Even a like or a dislike can be perceived as a judgment. We should never determine our value by how many likes we receive. What others think of our comment does not define our worth. There is no right or wrong way to grieve. There is no need to judge each other. We do all need to feel loved and accepted, so always encourage one another with your comments. My intent for this online grief support is for widows to share their story with one another so that we can all support, encourage, and help each other in our grief journey. In my own life, I have always enjoyed journaling. I found journaling my grief therapeutic. I also found comfort in connecting one-on-one with family and friends who I could share my grief with. As I mentioned before, I also joined a grief share group and a widow's grief support group. All of these activities helped me to deal with my grief. How are you dealing with your grief? What have you found helpful? Do you journal? Do you have family or friends to share with? Have you joined a support group? If you have not found anyone to connect with, you really do need to try to find someone you can share with. Do not try to go through this alone. You can't carry this weight alone. You are not strong enough at this time.